kind of vision for its people, for its customers, for its consumers. And so for me, it's much more about the culture of a company, and that's what we should all be choosing a job based on. But you know what? Like, at the end of the day, there are, you know, there are very few senior women in any business around the world. The statistics are appalling, you know, so I could sit here and quote you 5 different statistics, and, you know, 5% of the C-level executives in Fortune 500 companies are women, and, you know, we all know them. So the statistics are still appalling if you go on a gender basis. The structure around you, you know, it does make a difference. There's no doubt, you know, when you talk about Facebook, you know, you can hear the kind of actions they've taken to try and move the company beyond this kind of gender bias. And I think, you know, the business I work in, you know, Diageo is also trying, and I think most companies are trying. They just don't necessarily always know the right things to take. And this is where it comes back to responsibility on us and our roles in that industry or in that company to think, how do I do this in an appropriate way? How do I actually make a difference? And how do I actually change the course of the company? And for me, a lot of it is understanding what the company's motivated by. So back to the point around, you know, these, in our business, you know, teams of men and women make more money for the company, right? That is an interesting conversation, as opposed to a conversation around we need more women. That does turn people off. So I think, you know, in general, there are so many statistics out there, which is why we've gone down with our Plan W about women empowering women in Asia Pacific, because communities, it's not even just businesses, communities where women are empowered are richer communities in terms of quality of life, in terms of life expectancy, in terms of investment, in terms of progress. And that's beyond just corporations, that's in the community in general. And so that's why I think the structure around you does make a difference, but we all own that structure because we're all part of the structure.
It's a question I want to actually just throw out at this point, then I'm going to take the question from the lady who's raised her hand out there. Are really women their own worst enemies quite often in the situation of business? And should we just get on with it? Who's going to jump in and take that one? Come on, Grace.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, could you say that again? I thought we were trying out to
I think that it's interesting what's coming out of this. There is a lot over here within our panel about moving forward, where, you know, we're beyond gender. But in many situations, I mean, I've experienced those as well, are women often their own worst enemies within the business and within the practices that they do? And should we just be getting on with it and just moving forward?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, you know, we need to also work with each other to progress, right? We need more catalysts within the industry, or all industries, but we also need to, you know, further enable other women. So you really need to motivate each other, right? And by creating ecosystems, by having the right environment, and by educating the younger generation, we're all going to be able to progress in that direction. And I really do hope that we move beyond that gender side of things. I agree that we need to have these women communities for similar reasons that Siobhan had said, but, you know, I think that it's one of those things that you just can't stop yourself. If you feel passionately about something, and that's really what it comes down to, it's what's your purpose in life. You know, if you want to move forward and you want to only do, you know, as cliche it may sound, a flower shop or whatever, that's great. And that's what success is to you, wonderful, right? Who's to judge that it's not right or it's wrong, you know, that it's right or wrong?
It's in a way being able to come to a point where you move beyond your own gender. It's not about you know, not claiming your womanity, but moving beyond that yourself in order to move the entire system forward.
Yeah, I think we also need to stop judging, right? I really do. I think we put the pressure on other women to judge, and then we put the men, you know, the men also then judge us, but we also judge men. I mean, if you have a stay-at-home father, right? You know, there was that TED talk about that Sheryl Sandberg gave, where she was saying that in the, you know, the play group, the women were like, "What's he doing here? Why isn't he at work?
Yeah, why is he such a loser? What the hell is he doing here?"
You know, and that's a perfect
It's
example.
true. It works both ways. The stereotypes. I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to take that lady's question back there. And if anybody else actually has some questions they'd like to throw out to us, you know, we're all ready for you. I want to make it an interesting conversation and worth your while this morning, okay? Please, your name, please.
Hello, I'm Susanna Hasenöhl, and I really like to stop all the negative talk about being women. I think it's great to be a woman, and the point about that is not just about being a woman, but being different in many occasions. And I think there are many opportunities to, capitalize on the fact of being different. I've always worked in sales and business development in male-dominated industries. Yeah? And I don't mean this in any sexual way whatsoever, but I've often been in situations where there may be 2 women, 8 guys. Often the guys are the senior decision makers. Yeah? But who the guys want to talk to? The ladies, not the 8 guys if we talk about golf. So I think this can be something very positive, but the point is not about being a woman, but being different, making a difference, doing something different in people's interest. So I would be very interested in your esteemed panelists, whether you've had some similar experiences where you just made the difference, maybe on the surface by being a woman, but then kind of moving to the discussion to the next level. What kind of positive experiences have you had in this context?
Your timing is impeccable, because the next question that I really wanted to put to the panel was, let's talk about the gender and its positive role in actually growing businesses. And Margaret, I think I'd like you to start with that, please. Thank you for your great questions.
Yes, okay, well, I'll start off with the fact that I became a female entrepreneur, and when I became a female entrepreneur, I was 36. Previously, I've been working at Pricewaterhouse and other big accountancy organisations where, at that point in time, certainly the glass ceiling was very much intact. And that wasn't just Pricewaterhouse, it was very much across the whole of those sorts of organisations. And they wanted to try very hard to remove the glass ceiling, but they had failed to remove the glass ceiling. Anyway, I decided to become an entrepreneur, and the weight that kind of fell off my shoulders was absolutely amazing. Now, I could become myself. The success was in my hands. It wasn't whether I could impress my bosses or pretend to be a guy or drink pints. I had exactly the same experience. And it gave me a whole new lease of life. And one of the things I would love is for there to be more role models for female entrepreneurs. And those role models are absolutely vital. When we make somebody chief executive or managing director of a business, quite often in our business, we're a very small business, we've got 250 people, something like Diageo, and when we make somebody a managing director, it's really quite funny because for the first 6 months, they become the managing director, whichever managing director they've seen on the latest, American soap opera. They become what they think is a managing director. And it takes them 6 months, doesn't matter whether they're male or female, it takes them 6 months to realise that they can actually be themselves. And I think for our daughters, there are still not enough female entrepreneurs, female managers. And while, Susanna, I love the concept of positivity, and I so do, for me, I would like my daughters to work in a workplace where 50% of C-level of Fortune 500 companies are women, not 5%. So I think we've got a little way to go yet.
Grace, if you would jump right in.
I think with Susanna's question, I think we should use it to our strength, right? There's many ways that you can, and I agree within the sales and marketing side, and that avenue, we can try and look at the positive side of things only because of the fact that why not, right? I mean, everyone has charm, everyone has charisma, and if you're a woman and you can do it, I say there's nothing wrong with that. All to you for that. With regards to the C-level side, I think that a lot of the times there are women as well who are given these opportunities in top positions and then deny it, because of their own choices, and that's fine too. So I think it's very hard to see black and white, and I think we need to live in the gray a little bit more. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Did you want to add something to that?
I was just going to say, just to the point, look, I love being a woman, so if anything came across that we don't, that's not good. You know, I love the fact that I got to carry our babies. I expect men to carry my bag when it's too heavy for them. You know, I do. I like all of that stuff. That's just who I am. I hope to goodness when men talk to me in a meeting, they do it because of my capability and because I have value to add to the decision and not for any other reason. I think the point about choices is probably the most important thing for me, because I do think women opt out. There was a tweet earlier about how do you balance work and family, and that's like a whole conversation that could take us all day, which I know we don't have time, and it's not easy. You know, what I try and do is teach my little girl who's 3. She's just got into the princess phase, and so we only wear ballet tutus at all times. But she also picks up her Dora computer and sits beside me and says, "Mummy, I do my work with you." And now I know that I'm going to give her choices, and she might choose to be a CEO, and she might choose not to be a CEO, but the point is she'll have choices. And I do think we have to acknowledge that point, that, you know, women make different choices at different times in their life, and what we need to do is support those choices as women.
I don't think it's any more about the either or the or. The conversation we had, you know, before this was really about how we're in a unique position to be the role models actually for the next generation. It's not where our mothers were, where they had to suffer in a certain kind of a way to stick their necks out there. We're already out there. And, you know, apologies if it came across as female bashing, but I think that you cannot talk about women in business without talking about how women might be operating in business as well. And I think we have to hold the mirrors up to ourselves before we hold the mirror outwards and say that it's necessarily a negative environment because there aren't enough women, or that it's necessarily a negative environment because there are too many men.
Yeah.
Sunita.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that also has come across for women out here in Asia is we almost feel that we have one battle as a woman and then one battle as an Asian. And I can kind of see maybe that's where that tweet came from with this panel is not representative of Singapore women. But again, you know, echoing everybody else's thoughts, it's wonderful being a woman. We're strong and we're smart, every one of us. And it's just a matter of saying what we think, just like the guys do.
We have a lot of questions. Woo, now we're talking. Okay, I think I saw the lady in the... We're actually down to our last 10 minutes. Before I take any questions, I just want to tap on a little bit about the social media side of things and just ask Siobhan, does social media actually do anything to advance alcohol brands and how it's marketed to women at all? Very quickly.
Very quickly, because I know there's lots of questions. Yes, it does. So social media is the currency, regardless of gender. I don't think social media is an exclusive female thing. It's a key part of our marketing. We don't use it in a gender-specific way. You know, Facebook has been absolutely pivotal to our growth, and so yes is the very short answer. But I don't believe there's anything gender-specific in that.
Thank you. Margaret, very quickly to you. Why is it that most brands still appear to be on the back foot when it comes to conquering digital and social media? And why don't they take any of your advice?
They occasionally take my advice.
But you know what I mean.
But in general, brands find social media incredibly difficult because of their structural heritage in broadcast advertising. So that broadcast concept of advertising rather than one-to-one advertising is still very, very tough to get across, just generally in terms of process in a business.
And I'm going to make the assumption that it's regardless of the fact that a woman is standing in the room trying to convince them, because there is this attitude and mentality that women just are naturally very adept at social media, which I think is a fallacy.
It's an incredible urban myth that is growing up and becoming very, very popular, that social media equals women.
Thank you. I'm going to take some questions from the floor. So the lady with the orange shirt actually stuck her hand up first. Thank you. If you just say who you are.
Hi, my name is Nadia Bremner, and it's not a question, it's more just a remark, because I support this conversation, but I really like your point about choices. Because I come from the background, I was born and raised in Soviet Union, and we had real gender equality. And like my mom and my grandmother, everybody works the same as men. But I think, well, putting aside all that, the system didn't work all together, but what I see now in my country, even my husband, who's Scottish, he comes to my country and he says, like, what do I see? Why it's only women aside the roads digging holes? So it's women who are doing hard work. It's women now who took, because after, of course, we have a lot of problems in the development, but very often, like I would say 80% it's a woman who is a breadwinner, woman is working, taking care of the family. So when I'm looking back, I'm like, when I look at this, I think actually, you know, it's sometimes nice to be a woman who doesn't have all the power to do. So I think it's really nice to have choices.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing a very interesting insight. There's another lady over there. Deborah, hello. Nice to see some familiar faces. Is there a microphone we can pass forward? Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. I just wanted to pick up on what Sunita said. I'm Deborah from PR Director at BBH Asia Pacific, which is the ad agency. I think from an Asian woman's perspective, I think I've always, from a personal perspective, you know, in work, in social, in any environment, you always feel that you are judged immediately for being Asian, being a woman. And I think that having had that, you sort of have to be fantastic if you want to get ahead. It's just the way it is. And I think women, we still haven't gone past the sort of not being judged, or obviously there's still a lot of chauvinism, etc., and judgment in the workplace and outside of it. And I think the way to get over that is just to be absolutely at your top of the game, be absolutely fantastic at what you do, and just don't leave any room for that to be challenged. And I know it's easier said than done, but I think to start that way will get you far, and not to let the voice tell you otherwise. That's kind of how it's, you know, it's worked for me, and I think we should all kind of believe that we can do that.
Thank you for that. I just want to add to that, really. Is it about being fantastic to get ahead, or is it about being fantastic so that you're ahead of yourself?
I think it's the latter.
Yeah. You know, to be ahead of yourself, the demand for your own personal excellence versus your excellence because you need to compete in a particular environment. Because I think we're at that point, well, I hope that we are getting at that point where we're trying to move beyond gender, we're trying to move beyond what race we are as well, that it's a kind of a universal feeling that women are moving forward. I saw that lady up there first, and then I'm going to come to the ladies in the front.
Okay, hello, my name is Anna Himmanen, and it was said earlier how the statistics tell the awful story about women leaders and how many there really are. At least in Europe, many companies are now taking these regulations to force companies to get women leaders to executive boards. I would like to hear your opinions about this, as there are a lot of different opinions, both from men and women, about these regulations.
And who would you like to have answer your question, please?
Who feels maybe most passionate about
Perhaps, Margaret, you can answer that, because you're speaking about regulations in Europe, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, Margaret.
I used to be incredibly against any sort of quota system. I feel that primarily I'm a human being, I'm an individual, and I'm a person. I am my own person. I feel myself almost beyond gender. So a quota system to me was, ridiculous. However, I've come to change my mind. If we do want to have a society where we really have choices, where the choice could be, I want to be Mummy, I want to be Chief Executive of Diageo. If we want those choices, I think we have to create sufficient role models at the top levels of business. And we have two ways of doing that. We can do it organically, and I think that would be quite slow, or we can do it by quotas and force it. So I still dislike quotas. I would love another method of doing that, but I believe that quotas possibly would get us there more quickly. And it'd be very interesting to see some of the experiments that are going on in Europe about creating X percentage of boards as women, and seeing how that actually pans out over time.
I gotta say, quota kind of makes me feel like a cattle.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure that I'm really in support of it. I'm in support of it in terms of the fact that there needs to be greater equality, but it also points to a huge inequality that has just gone on and on for such a long time, and that women are still being hired necessarily just because they're women, versus the fact that they're actually talented and just happen to be women.
It's true. I mean, there is no doubt about the fact that a quota system is morally has some real downsides. But if anyone's got any fantastic ideas of how to create that real choice for our daughters, I would love to hear it.
I said, if anyone's got one of those great ideas, come and speak to Margaret, please, immediately. I'm going to take the lady's question in front in 1 second, but that lady over there in the white dress has been desperately trying to, just give me 1 second, has been desperately trying to get her question heard. If you could stand up and tell us who you are, please.
Hi, I'm Lydia Harrison. I work with Rossi as a brand manager. So we have a very female, obviously, oriented market, and I don't believe this is about female misogyny or, just by the nature of what we're talking about. But there is a certain level of irony just by the title of what we're talking about and the number of women in the room. So kind of what do I want to ask you guys, and actually this goes to all of you. Do you think men spend this much time talking about the gender gap? Do you think that we are widening that gender gap just by the sheer nature of what we talk about? I'm totally with this lady who was speaking earlier of the opinion that we are our own worst enemy sometimes. I believe in personal empowerment. I don't think you wait for other people, not just men, other people to do that for you. But I'd love to know, in answer to my question, what do you guys think? Do you think they sit there on a panel and talk to men about what to do to empower them? I think not.
Great question, which is kind of where we started in the beginning, and I was worried that just asking the question about moving beyond gender would end the entire conversation. But we managed a whole hour. I'm going to ask each of you to please answer that question. Sunita, perhaps you could start first.
That's a great question, and that's actually a question that we asked ourselves at Facebook in January this year when we were sat in a room exactly like this. We looked at each other and we said, have we put ourselves here? I think we have. Men definitely don't have sessions like this where they talk about trying to get ahead. It's something we eventually have to move away from. I'd love to know when that tipping point will happen, and I think that's why we have to get almost stronger about this. And one thing that we're trying at Facebook is to just move away from having a women's group or a women's leadership group into just a leadership group. Mentoring is not about mentoring a girl or a woman younger than you, but it's just mentoring someone who you think, regardless of gender, you can help develop their career for.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Look, I think it's a fair point. Do I think men do this? No, of course they don't. We all know that. We've all heard of them. Do I think it's a shame there aren't more men here? Yeah, I do, because they're part of the solution, right? What I do know is that, women are not as empowered as men. They simply aren't in most parts of the world. And Asia Pacific is ranked by the UN 5th out of the 6 regions in the world in terms of women's empowerment. I do 110% believe that it has to be about you creating your opportunities, it has to be about you taking responsibility, it has to be about you, it's about your capability, not about your gender. That being said, I think there are still a lot of glass ceilings out there in every environment. So I think they are there in the corporate place, I think they are there, there's that great statistic about women do 90% of the world's work and have about 5% of the world's income. And that's true, that is a fact. So I think it is important that we take responsibility to empower women. So that's why I do have energy for actually women driving that agenda, because men aren't going to drive it. Where you have the strength, where you've been given the choices, where you've been given the education, where you've been given the opportunity, then you have a responsibility to charge on. But we also have a responsibility to bring the rest of society with us. So I do agree with you. I don't think men are doing this, particularly not in a business context. But I still think it's important for us to do it.
Thank you. Grace?
Yeah, I agree pretty much with everything that you've just said. I do think that, you know, if we don't talk about it, then there's less awareness as well. Men obviously don't talk about it, but they do have their own secret men's business where they go out and talk about other things and maybe their own insecurities. They definitely don't have conferences about it. I think we're just different, and I think that's okay. We just have to sort of accept that and really try and look at ways of moving forward, whether it is just with women and how we can then, you know, work with men to also educate them and help them move forward as well.
Do men have conferences like this? Well, there are 95% of C-level are men. No, they don't. I bet you if there were 5% of C-level were men, there'd be many more conferences like this. And I feel about that really very passionately. Of course there are. They don't need them. They're there. You know, they're sitting there at the top of big businesses. Would they have them? Oh yes.
I have time to take a couple more questions from the audience. I hope that's answered the lady's question. Yes, thank you. Lady in blue. If you could just tell us your name, please, and where you're from.
Georgie Pasalaris. I work with Siobhan. I work at Dojo, and I'm running SMW. And my journey to understanding the position where women are at the moment in the last few months has been a very personal one as well as a professional one. The point of choice is critical. Grace talked about choosing to be a CEO or not. And although some of us have the choice at the moment, 90% or more don't. And in order to have choice, we have to help to drive change. So we've talked a lot about mentoring, but what does a great mentor look like? And how does one drive choice up to affect policies and some amazing stuff or interesting stuff that's going on in Europe, and to affect those who are young and coming into roles?
Can I ask that? Because I am an implementer at the Hub Singapore. So I work with mentors who are, you know, quite a few years older than myself, and I work with the startups and entrepreneurs there. And it's a very good question because there isn't one type of mentor, and I think it's about having several mentors and people that you look up to, men or women.
And for a variety of different reasons.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely, because a lot of it is personal development and personal growth and progress as an individual, as well as being open to different cross-sector ideas, all of that. For myself, I have had the pleasure of meeting other women and men in different positions who I've aspired to be like or connect with, so I can also learn. So I think it's hard, it's a hard question because there isn't one type. And we work with several startups, and sometimes you work with them and you realize, you know what, it's not aligned. And so they find other mentors, or you put them in touch with other people that may see in a much more similar vision to them. So it's a hard question and it's a fine balance, and we're still working that out, you know, at the Hub, I know, because it's how do you decide who do you go and see and speak to? It's like an executive coach, right? How do you know which one is right? You kind of usually have to go see them for 20 minutes free first, and then see how it goes from there.
And obviously, it isn't about necessarily assuming that either gender-led, you know, type of business is necessarily a positive or a negative.
Yeah. I think it's looking at what are the 3 most important things to you as a person, and does the person that you're connecting with, who you would like to be a mentor, see that as the same way? Because if not, then you need to move away from there.
Well said. Do we have a little bit of time for a couple more questions? Actually, we do. Okay, I'm gonna grab this lady's question, then that lady, and then this lady.
Good morning, my name is Crystal Benham. We have talked a lot about, it's all about the capabilities. I'm wondering if in a workplace where it's all about men, how do you create your opportunities to actually prove your capabilities? Because from my experience, I know I'm good at certain things, and I've been trying to prove it in different companies I've worked in the past. And I've seen that another guy that has less experience than I do, he's got more opportunities to actually prove himself. And I have faced with the occasions that basically I'm just kind of ignored, that, oh yeah, you're just a girl, you just, you know, because of age or because you're a woman and you don't understand finance, for instance, so to say. So how do, as a woman, we create our opportunities in the world that are, or in the areas that are mainly ruled by men? So
great question.
Thank you.
Actually, Siobhan and Sunita, if you could both go and answer that question, because Siobhan, earlier you had spoken very much about the structures around you. You might be all raring to go, but the structure around you isn't.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, you know, because it's all very easy to sit here and say, you know, create your own opportunities, show how good you are, and off you go. And actually, when the environment doesn't allow you to do that, the question becomes how. You know, it probably merits a much longer conversation, you know, but you know, the way that I try and encourage people to do it, because, you know, we do have a quota system in Diageo that we're trying to achieve on women, and I don't necessarily agree with all of that, but it has actually made some of the men on my team feel a bit like, so is that it? You know, like, Siobhan, am I now not going to get the next job because they've got to give it to a woman? Is that what you're telling me? And it's fascinating. And so the advice I've given them, or the way they're approaching it, is very similar to the kinds of things we need to do. So for example, you know, find 3 people or 2 people who actually are people who can act as a mentor for you, or not even a mentor, people who can give you opportunities, people who will actually listen. Even if it's only one person, what you need in most organisations is a network. It's a network of people who will believe in you as a person, who will give you opportunities, who will find your talents. And being able to create that network, which may only start with 1 or 2 people, is a key way to go. And also, to create that network, to create those relationships, think about how you're going to do it. You know, is it about having a meeting with someone? Is it about, you know, proactively doing a proposal? Is it about going for lunch? It is that strategic, and write it down on a piece of paper, because it's a strategic networking plan, and that's what you need to do as one option.
I think businesses need to catch up to women as well. Absolutely. I think it's all very well and fine to have quotas and to have, you know, systems that women are going to get these jobs and so on, but if the entire structure is working against, I would recommend that you change jobs. Change companies. No, I mean, at the end of the day, what you're looking for is the connection on every single level, and if the structure is 90% against you actually advancing, then you're in the wrong, it's what Grace said earlier, the connection is completely wrong place for the wrong person, and I think a lot of companies have yet to actually catch up to this. They have things in place, but they're not actually going anywhere with them. Please.
And that was exactly what I was going to say. If you're in a situation where you have that drive, but the company's not letting you grow, leave. Because we've been talking about choices. That's what any guy would do. They wouldn't sit there and put up with it, so why should you? So go and find, and you will find that place that will really help you to thrive.
And that's kind of what I meant earlier about get the hell on with it. Oh, we have room just for one last question. Just one. Otherwise someone's going to throw a dagger at me from the audience right in the front.
My question is to everyone on the panel. I have 2 questions actually. The first one being that since you managed equal gender groups before, what do women bring to the table that you think that men are unable to? And my second question would be, are there any women leadership styles and qualities that you think that we as women outshine men in?
Great question.
2 questions.
Thank you. And is there anyone in particular that you wanted to answer that question?
Anyone on the panel who wants to share?
Jump right in, ladies. Qualities that, you're saying qualities that women have that outshine?
Yeah, that's the second question.
That
And the first
table.
question is, when you manage your equal gender groups, what do women usually
What do women bring to the table?
that the men usually seem hard